The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with light and music. 12 species had gathered on the orbital citadel called Everwatch. They came from different worlds. They spoke different languages. But tonight, they all smiled the same smile. Tonight, they celebrated death. High Counselor Voss stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall and pale, with skin like cold marble. His species, the Thelan, had ruled the council for 600 years. They believed in order. They believed in control. And they believed that some species were simply too dangerous to live. Humans were one such species. "My friends," Voss said, raising a glass filled with golden liquid. "Tonight marks a new age. The human problem is finally solved." The chamber erupted in applause. Diplomats and generals, merchants and scientists, they all clapped their various hands and tentacles. Some had 2 arms. Some had 6. But they all agreed on one thing. Earth had to burn. A massive holographic display floated above the chamber. It showed the blue and green planet that humans called home. Or rather, it showed what was left of it. Great fires spread across the continents. The oceans boiled and turned to steam. Cities that had stood for thousands of years became ash in seconds. The Council's cleansing protocol was complete. "For 300 years we contained them," Voss continued. "We denied them the stars. We watched them from orbit. We kept them trapped on their little world like animals in a cage." He paused and looked around the room with satisfaction. "Some said we were cruel. Some said we should give them a chance. But we knew the truth. Humans were violent. Humans were unpredictable. Humans bred too fast and thought too differently. They would have spread across the galaxy like a disease." Ambassador Kira of the Ring Collective shifted in her seat. She was small compared to the others, with large dark eyes that saw more than most. While everyone else cheered, she stayed quiet. Something felt wrong. "Ambassador Kira," called Counselor Wren, a young politician who enjoyed the sound of his own voice. "You do not seem pleased. Do you mourn the primitives?" Kira shook her head slowly. "I do not mourn them. I simply find it strange." "What is strange?" "The silence," Kira said. "When we attacked Earth, there were no distress calls. No pleas for mercy. No attempts to negotiate. They just died quietly." Wren laughed. It was not a kind sound. What could they do? They had no fleet. No weapons that could reach us. They were primitives playing with rockets while we commanded the stars. Their silence was the silence of the helpless. "Perhaps," Kira said. But she did not believe it. The celebration continued. Servants brought food from 100 worlds. Musicians played songs of victory. Diplomats made speeches about peace and prosperity now that the human threat was gone. Voss walked through the crowd, accepting praise and admiration. He had planned the cleansing for decades. He had convinced the other species that humans were too dangerous to exist. And now, his legacy was secure. He would be remembered as the one who saved the galaxy dot in a small room beneath the main chamber. A young technician named Brill stared at his screen. He was not important. He was not invited to the celebration. His job was simple: watch the sensors and report anything unusual. For hours, there was nothing to report. Just the usual readings. Stars and planets and empty space. Then something changed. A small light appeared on his screen. It was far away, about 1/3 of a light year from the Citadel. At first, Brill thought it was debris from Earth's destruction. Rocks and dust thrown into space by the explosion. But the light was growing. Brill adjusted his sensors. He ran the numbers again. The readings made no sense. The object was not debris. It was not a comet or an asteroid dot. It was a ship. No. It was many ships. Brill felt his blood turn cold. He tried to count the signals, but they multiplied faster than he could follow. 10 ships. 100 ships. 1,000 ships. More. He reached for his communication device to alert the council. But then he stopped. Above him, he could hear the music and laughter of the celebration. High Counselor Voss was probably giving another speech about victory and peace. Who would believe him? Brill was young and unimportant. If he interrupted the celebration with wild claims about a ghost fleet, he would lose his job. Maybe worse. So he watched the screen. He watched the lights multiply. And he told himself it was probably nothing. A sensor error. A glitch in the system. It had to be nothing. Back in the Grand Chamber, Voss raised his glass one more time. The holographic display behind him showed Earth's final death. The planet cracked open like an egg. The core spilled out into space. 8 billion years of history ended in fire. To peace, Voss declared. To order. To a galaxy free from the human plague. To peace, the crowd repeated. They drank. They cheered. They believed the war was over before it began. They were wrong. Far away in the cold darkness of space, 4,000 warships powered their engines. 12,000 civilian vessels held their positions. 3 massive stations, each one carrying millions of humans, prepared for the journey ahead. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the distant glow of Earth's destruction. His home, his planet, the world where his mother and father had chosen to stay and die. His face showed no emotion. His voice was steady and calm. The council thinks we are dead, he said. Let them think it a little longer. He turned to his officers. Men and women who had trained their whole lives for this moment. Children of exiles. Survivors of the long silence. Soon, Taiho said, we will teach them the truth. The fleet waited in the void, patient, ready. The celebration continued, but not for long. The music stopped first, then the lights flickered. A low alarm began to sound somewhere deep in the Citadel. The diplomats looked at each other with confusion. This was supposed to be a night of celebration. Nothing was supposed to go wrong. High Counselor Voss frowned and touched the communication device on his wrist. Control room, report. What is happening? There was silence. Then a shaking voice answered. Aye, Counselor, we have contacts. Many contacts. Emerging from fold space at coordinates 773. What kind of contacts? Ships, sir. Thousands of them. The holographic display above the chamber changed. Earth's burning image disappeared. In its place came a view of deep space near the Citadel, and the room fell silent. Ships filled the darkness like stars. They came in all sizes. Massive warships with heavy armor and long guns. Smaller fighters that moved like angry insects. And behind them, protected by the fleet, were civilian vessels and stations so large they blocked out the light of distant suns. The council had never seen anything like it. This is impossible, whispered Counselor Wren. His earlier confidence was gone. The humans had no fleet. They had no full drive technology. We made sure of that. Ambassador Kira stood slowly. Her dark eyes were wide. The silence, she said. Now I understand the silence. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the chamber lit up with the same image. A human face. An old man with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple military uniform with no medals or decorations. Admiral Taiho looked at the council, and the council looked back at him. Members of the Galactic Council, Taiho said. His voice was steady and cold. You have made a terrible mistake. Voss stepped forward, trying to regain control. This is impossible. Earth is destroyed. Your species is extinct. Earth is destroyed, Taiho agreed. But we are not Earth. We are something else now. We are the People Fleet, and we have been waiting for you. The Admiral paused and let his words sink in. For 40 years, we built this fleet in secret. We hollowed out asteroids in the far edges of our solar system. We stole your technology piece by piece. We studied your ships, your weapons, your tactics. And while you watched our planet with your satellites and your spies, 11 billion of us escaped into the void. Gasps filled the chamber. 11 billion. The number was beyond understanding. The people you killed today were volunteers, Taiho continued. Brave men and women who chose to stay behind. They lived normal lives. They went to work. They raised families. They pretended everything was fine. Also, you would believe we were still trapped on Earth. His voice hardened. They died so that we could live. They burned so that our children could see the stars. And you celebrated their sacrifice with wine and music. Voss tried to speak, but no words came out. We do not ask for your apology, Taiho said. We do not want your regret. Those things are worthless now. We only want you to understand one simple truth. He leaned forward, and his eyes burned with cold fire. You did not destroy humanity. You only made us angry. The transmission ended. The screens went dark. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, chaos erupted. Counselors shouted orders. Officers ran to their stations. Alarms screamed throughout the Citadel. The celebration was over. War had begun. Far across space. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of her warship, the Han River. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and steady hands. She had trained for combat since she was 15. She had never seen Earth except in pictures. Admiral Taiho's message is complete, her communications officer reported. The council is in panic. Yuna nodded. Good. Begin the advance. All ships follow attack pattern 3. The fleet moved forward like a single living creature. 4,000 warships spread out in formations that humans had practiced for decades. They knew the Council's tactics. They knew the Council's weaknesses. They had studied their enemy for 300 years. In the engineering section of a nearby cruiser, Chief Engineer Woojin watched his screens with careful eyes. He was 41 years old and had spent half his life building the full drives that brought the fleet here. Every equation, every circuit, every piece of stolen technology, he knew them all. Silence bombs are ready, he reported to Captain Yuna. On your command. Deploy them. Woojin pressed a button. Small devices launched from 100 ships. They flew toward the Citadel and exploded in flashes of blue light. The explosions were not destructive. They were worse. They were silence. Every communication system in the Council fleet went dead. Every call for help was blocked. Every message to distant reinforcements was stopped. The Citadel was now alone. On the great station New Seoul, Dr. Minji watched the battle begin through a large window. She was 52 years old with gray streaks in her hair. 40 years ago, she had organized the evacuation of Earth. She had decided who would leave and who would stay. She had made choices that still haunted her dreams. A young nurse stood beside her. Doctor, the children are asking questions. They want to know what is happening. Minji did not look away from the window. Tell them the truth. Tell them we are going home. But we have no home. Earth is gone. Then we will make a new one. Minji finally turned. Her eyes were tired but determined. That is what humans do. We lose everything, and then we build again. We always build again. Outside, the battle grew fierce. Council ships tried to form defensive lines, but the human fleet cut through them like water through sand. The Council fought with order and discipline. The humans fought with creativity and rage. Admiral Taiho watched the battle unfold from his command chair. His officers reported victories and losses. Ships destroyed. Lives ended. The cost of freedom was always paid in blood. Sir, his tactical officer said, The Council is launching escape pods. Should we intercept? Taiho shook his head. Let them go. We are not here to kill civilians. We are here to end the Council's power. And if they refuse to surrender? Taiho looked at the citadel on his screen. The great station was surrounded now. Its shields were failing. Its weapons were silent. Then we will teach them that humans do not forgive. But we also do not forget what we are. He stood and straightened his uniform. Prepared the boarding parties. We take the citadel tonight. The fleet closed in. The void had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first human boots touched the citadel floor at exactly midnight. Sergeant Do-hyun led his squad through a broken airlock. The corridor beyond was dark and filled with smoke. Warning lights flashed red. Somewhere far away, alarms screamed without stopping. Stay close, Do-hyun said. Watch your corners. These halls were built for creatures bigger than us. Use that. His soldiers nodded. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster. But more important than the armor was their training. Every human marine had spent years preparing for this moment. The squad moved forward. The citadel was a maze of wide corridors and high ceilings. Council species were often large. Some stood 3 meters tall with 4 arms. They had built their station to match their size. But that meant humans could hide in places the Council never expected. Do-hyun pointed to a ventilation shaft above them. Jisoo, take 2 soldiers through the upper passages. Flank any resistance from above. A young woman with sharp eyes nodded and climbed into the shaft. 2 others followed. They disappeared into the darkness like ghosts. The Council had never fought an enemy like this. On the bridge of the Han River, Captain Yuna commanded the space battle with cold precision. Her ship had taken heavy damage in the first attack, but she refused to retreat. Enemy carrier at bearing 2-5, her weapons officer reported. It is launching fighters. Yuna studied her tactical display. The Council carrier was massive, 10 times the size of her ship. Its fighters poured out like angry bees from a hive. Target their launch bays, she ordered. If they cannot launch fighters, they cannot fight. The Han River's guns fired. Bright beams of energy cut across space and struck the carrier's side. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. The enemy fighters scattered in confusion, but the carrier was not dead. It turned its main guns toward Yuna's ship and fired. Brace for impact. The Han River shook violently. Lights flickered. Crew members fell from their stations. Damage reports flooded in from every section. Main engines are hit, the engineering officer shouted. We are losing power. Yuna made her decision in a heartbeat. All hands, prepare for emergency maneuver. She looked at her helmsman. Ram their engine section. Full speed. Captain, we will not survive. The civilian transports behind us will survive. That is what matters. Do it. The Han River accelerated. Its broken engines screamed with effort. The Council carrier tried to turn away, but it was too slow. Too large. The human ship struck like a bullet. The explosion lit up space for 1,000 kilometers. When the light faded, both ships were gone. But 3 civilian transports, carrying 200,000 humans, continued their journey to safety. Captain Yuna had made her trade. Inside the citadel, Councilor Ren ran through the corridors. His fine robes were torn. His political confidence was shattered. He had never expected to face real danger. He was a diplomat, not a soldier. He turned a corner and stopped. A human stood in his path. Just one. A female soldier with blood on her armor and a rifle in her hands. She was small compared to Ren. Her head barely reached his chest, but her eyes made him freeze. There was no hatred in those eyes. No rage, just calm, cold purpose. She looked at him the way a worker looks at a task that must be completed. Please, Ren said. I am a counselor. I have value. I can negotiate. We are not here to negotiate, the soldier said. We are here to collect the debt. She raised her rifle. Ren closed his eyes and waited for death. But the shot never came. When he opened his eyes, the soldier had moved past him. She did not even look back. Why? He whispered. Because you are not worth the bullet, she said. Surrender to the next squad, you see. They will take you prisoner. She disappeared around the corner. Ren sank to his knees and trembled in the council chamber. High Counselor Voss tried to organize a defense, but his officers were confused and afraid. The communication systems were dead. They could not call for help. They could not coordinate their forces. Where is the emergency fleet? Voss demanded. They should have arrived by now. An officer shook his head. The humans are blocking all signals. We cannot reach anyone outside the system. Ambassador Kira stood near the back of the chamber. She had not tried to escape. She had not panicked like the others. She simply watched and waited. High Counselor, she said quietly. Perhaps it is time to consider surrender. Voss turned on her with fury. Surrender? To animals? Never. They are not animals, Kira said. They never were. That was our mistake. Before Voss could respond, the main doors of the chamber exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Figures emerged from the darkness, human soldiers in powered armor, their weapons raised and ready. Sergeant Do Yoon walked at the front. His squad spread out to cover the room. Council officers dropped their weapons without being told. Do Yoon looked around the chamber. Crystal chandeliers, golden floors, artwork from 100 worlds. This was where the council had decided to kill Earth. This was where they had sentenced 8 billion volunteers to death. He felt nothing but cold satisfaction. High Counselor Voss, Do Yoon said. You are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will stand trial. You will answer for what you have done. Voss laughed bitterly. A trial? You cannot judge us. You are the inferior species. Do Yoon removed his helmet. His face was young but hard. His eyes had seen too much for his 29 years. We are not inferior, he said. We are angry. There is a difference. He turned to his squad. Secure the prisoners. Admiral Taihao will arrive soon. Outside, in the cold of space, the battle was ending. Council ships surrendered one by one. The great fleet that had burned Earth was broken and defeated. Chief Engineer Woojin watched from his station and allowed himself a small smile. The technology that the Council had denied humanity for 300 years, humans had stolen it, improved it, and used it against them. The student had surpassed the teacher. Admiral Taiho's shuttle left the flagship and flew toward the Citadel. He stood by the window and watched the station grow larger. Smoke rose from its damaged sections. Bodies floated in the space around it. The cost of victory was high, but the cost of slavery was higher. Taiho touched the glass with his fingertips. We are coming, he whispered. We are coming to make you remember. The debt collectors had arrived, and payment was due. While the battle raged around the Citadel, the Ark Station New Seoul drifted quietly in the darkness beyond the fighting. Dr. Minji walked through the station's central corridor. Around her, 11 million humans lived their daily lives. Children ran to school. Workers traveled to factories. Families sat down for meals together. From the outside, it looked almost normal, but nothing about their lives was normal. New Seoul was a city built inside a hollowed asteroid. Its people had lived here for 40 years. They had been born here, married here, raised children here. And they had done all of this knowing they could never go home. Earth was just a word to most of them. A story, a dream. Minji stopped at a large window that looked out into space. In the distance, she could see the flashes of battle. Ships dying. Lives ending. The future being written in fire and blood. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small glass jar. Inside was dark brown soil. Earth soil. The last handful she had taken before leaving 40 years ago. Dr. Minji. She turned. A young pilot stood behind her. The girl was maybe 19 years old with short hair and a flight suit covered in patches. Her name tag said Neon. "You should be at your station," Minji said. "They are sending me out. First combat mission." Naean tried to sound brave, but her hand shook slightly. "I wanted to see you before I left." Minji studied the young woman. Naean had been born on this station. She had never breathed real air or felt real rain. Everything she knew about Earth came from stories and recordings. "Are you afraid?" Minji asked. "Yes." Naean did not lie. "But my grandmother stayed on Earth so my mother could escape. My mother worked in the factories so I could train. How can I be afraid when they gave everything?" Minji nodded slowly. She held out the jar of soil. "Do you know what this is?" Naean's eyes went wide. "Is that real?" "The last of Earth. I have carried it for 40 years. Minji pressed the jar into Naean's hands. "Take it with you. Bring it back to me when the battle is over." Naean held the jar like it was made of gold. "I will protect it." "No." Minji shook her head. "It will protect you. Every human who ever lived is in that soil. Their strength is your strength. Remember that." Naean saluted and ran toward the flight deck. Minji watched her go and felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. On the flagship. Admiral Taiho prepared for the final assault on the citadel. His officers gave reports. His soldiers checked their weapons. Everything was proceeding according to plan. But Taiho's mind was somewhere else. Somewhere 40 years in the past. He remembered a small house on the coast of Korea. He remembered his mother cooking dinner while his father read the news. He remembered the day when the evacuation order came, and his parents looked at each other with quiet understanding. Someone had to stay. If everyone tried to leave, the council would notice. They would investigate. They would find the hidden fleet and destroy it before the evacuation was complete. Taiho's parents volunteered the same day. "You are young," his mother said. "You have a future. We have already lived our lives. I cannot leave you," Taiho had cried. He was only 27 then, a junior officer with dreams of exploration. "Let me stay instead." His father shook his head. "The fleet needs leaders. You will become one of them. And when the time comes, you will make the council remember that we existed." The last time Taiho saw his parents, they were standing on the dock of a small fishing village. They waved until his transport disappeared into the sky. 3 years later, they died with 8 billion others. Taiho had kept his father's last words in his heart ever since. "Make them remember. Make them know we lived, Admiral." His tactical officer interrupted his thoughts. "The Council's emergency fleet has entered the system. 200 warships." Taiho looked at the display. Fresh Council forces had arrived. They were still outnumbered by the People fleet, but they were organized and determined. The battle was not over yet. "Signal all ships," Taiho ordered. "Execute the full gambit." The full gambit was a tactic that no sane military would use. Ships would make tiny fold space jumps in random patterns, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield like ghosts. It created chaos. It broke formations. And it made it impossible for the enemy to predict where the next attack would come from. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was human. Across the battlefield, the People fleet began to dance. Ships vanished and reappeared in flashes of light. Council formations crumbled as they tried to track enemies that would not stay still. Naean flew her small fighter through the chaos. Her hands moved faster than her thoughts. She dodged enemy fire, lined up her targets, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The jar of earth soil sat in her pocket. She could feel its weight against her leg. "Enemy flagship ahead," her squadron leader announced. "They are launching fighters." Neon saw the massive council ship through her cockpit window. It was beautiful in a terrible way, all curves and lights and deadly purpose. Its bridge tower rose high above the main body, and in that bridge sat the commanders who ordered the attack on Earth. "I see an opening," Neon said. "The exhaust port below the bridge. Their shields are weak there. Too dangerous. Fall back and regroup." But Neon was already moving. She pushed her engines to maximum and dove toward the flagship. Enemy fire filled the space around her. Alarms screamed. Her shields failed. She thought of her grandmother standing on Earth as the bombs fell. She thought of her mother working 18-hour days in the factories. She thought of the soil in her pocket, the last piece of a world she never knew. "This is for you," she whispered. She fired. The torpedo flew straight and true. It entered the exhaust port and detonated inside the flagship's core systems. The explosion was massive. The bridge tower crumbled. The great ship began to break apart. Neon pulled up hard and escaped the debris field by centimeters. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But she was alive, and the council flagship was not in the council chamber. Voss and the other prisoners watched the battle through emergency displays. They saw their rescue fleet arrive. They saw it fall into chaos. They saw their flagship explode. "Impossible," Voss whispered. "They are primitives. How can they defeat us?" Ambassador Kira stood nearby. She understood what Voss could not. "Because they are not fighting for territory," she said. "They are not fighting for resources. They are fighting for their right to exist. There is no force in the galaxy more dangerous than that." Voss had no answer. The battle ended 3 hours later. The Council's emergency fleet surrendered or fled. The Citadel was completely under human control. Admiral Taiho's shuttle landed in the main hangar. He walked through the corridors where human soldiers now stood guard. He passed Council prisoners being led to holding cells. He heard the sound of his boots echoing off walls that had once belonged to his enemies. Finally, he reached the Grand Chamber. The doors opened before him. High Councilor Voss waited inside, surrounded by guards. The celebration decorations still hung from the ceiling. The golden floors were now covered in boot prints and blood. Taiho walked to the center of the room and stopped. "The galaxy is watching," he said. "Every species, every world, every ship with a receiver is seeing this moment." Voss raised his chin. "Then finish it. Kill me and prove you are the monsters we always said you were." Taiho shook his head. "We are not here to kill you. We are here to show you something you never understood." He gestured to the soldiers around the room. Men and women from different nations, different backgrounds, different beliefs. They had lost everything, and they had survived. "This is what you tried to destroy," Taiho said. "Not a planet, not a species, but the idea that ordinary people can endure anything. We carried our songs in our hearts. We taught our children stories about blue skies they would never see. We built this fleet with stolen technology and impossible dreams." He stepped closer to Voss. "You burned our cradle, but we already knew how to walk." Taiho turned to face the cameras that broadcast his image across the galaxy. "We are the People Fleet, and we are not going anywhere." The Grand Chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of machines. Admiral Taiho stood at the center of the room. Behind him, his soldiers held their positions. Before him, High Councilor Voss and the other prisoners waited for judgment. The whole galaxy was watching through stolen broadcast systems. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds saw this moment. They saw the species they had tried to erase standing victorious in the heart of their power. Voss spoke first. His voice was bitter and broken. "So this is your revenge. You will execute us on live broadcast. You will show the galaxy that humans are as savage as we always said." Taiho did not respond immediately. He walked slowly around the chamber, looking at the fine artwork on the walls. Paintings from species that had ruled the stars for millions of years. Statues of leaders who had built empires across galaxies. And they had all agreed to murder 8 billion innocent people. "Tell me something, High Counselor," Taiho finally said. "When you gave the order to burn Earth, did you feel anything? Regret? Doubt? Even a small voice that told you it was wrong?" Voss straightened his shoulders. "I felt relief. Humans were a threat. You bred too fast. You thought too differently. Someday, you would have challenged our power. I did what was necessary to protect the galaxy. Necessary." Taiho repeated the word like it tasted bad. "You killed children because they might grow up to disagree with you. You burned libraries because they contained ideas you feared. You silenced 8 billion voices because you were afraid of what they might say." He stopped in front of Voss and looked into his eyes. "And now you expect us to become you. You expect us to answer murder with murder. To prove that we are exactly what you said we were." Taiho shook his head. "We refuse." A murmur ran through the prisoners. Even Taiho's own soldiers seemed surprised. Ambassador Kira stepped forward. "What do you mean?" Taiho turned to address her and the cameras that broadcast his words. "For 40 years, my people lived in the darkness between stars. We raised children who never saw Earth's sun. We buried friends in the cold of space. We lost everything except our humanity." He paused to let his words sink in. "If we become murderers today, we lose that too. And then the Council wins. They prove that they were right to fear us. They prove that we were always monsters." He looked at Voss again. "I will not give you that victory." Voss blinked in confusion. "Then what do you want?" Taiho reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data device. He placed it on the podium in the center of the room. "These are our terms. Every species in the galaxy will hear them. The Council has 1 week to accept or reject." He activated the device. A holographic document appeared in the air above it. "First, humanity will be recognized as a sovereign species with full rights under galactic law. Second, the species that voted for Earth's destruction will pay reparations, not in money, but in worlds. Uninhabited planets where our people can build new homes. Third, all technology that was denied to us will be freely shared. And fourth," he looked directly at Voss, "the leaders who ordered the genocide will stand trial. Not a human trial. A galactic trial with judges from species that did not participate in the attack. Their fates will be decided by the laws they created." Voss laughed bitterly. "You think the other species will support you? You are still the enemy. You are still the species they feared." "Perhaps," Taiho said. "Or perhaps they will see that humans can win a war and still choose justice over revenge. Perhaps they will realize that we are exactly what they should have welcomed 300 years ago." He turned to Ambassador Kira. "You questioned the attack on Earth. You felt something was wrong. There must be others like you." Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "There are many," she said. "Many who never wanted this war. Many who were afraid to speak against the Council. You have given them a reason to speak now." She walked to the podium and stood beside the human admiral. A small gesture. A massive statement. "The Rin Collective will support humanity's terms," she announced. "We should have done this 300 years ago." One by one, other voices joined her. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough. The first cracks appeared in the old order. Taiho watched it happen and felt the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. This was what his parents had wanted. Not destruction, not revenge, just the simple right to exist among the stars. 3 days later, Naeon returned to New Seoul with the jar of earth soil. She found Dr. Minji in the same corridor, standing at the same window. "I brought it back," Naeon said. "Just like I promised." Minji took the jar and held it close. Her eyes were wet with tears. She did not try to hide. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming home." Naeon looked out the window. The battle was over. The fleet had won. But something in her felt empty rather than triumphant. "What happens now?" she asked. "We fought so hard to get here. What do we do with the peace?" Minji smiled. "We do what humans have always done. We build, we plant. We make new homes and fill them with new memories. We live." She opened the jar and poured the soil into a small pot that sat on the windowsill. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a tiny seed. "Do you know what this is?" Naeon shook her head. "An apple seed. From the last tree on Earth before we left." Minji planted the seed in the soil and covered it gently. "Someday, this will become a tree. And that tree will produce fruit. And those fruits will contain seeds. And those seeds will grow on whatever world we choose to call home." She placed the pot carefully on the windowsill. "That is how we win. Not with weapons. With roots." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. The council fractured as some species accepted humanity's terms and others refused. Wars threatened to begin, but they did not. The old order was dying, but a new one was not yet born. Admiral Taiho spent long hours in meetings with alien diplomats and human leaders. There were arguments and negotiations and moments when everything seemed ready to collapse, but they did not give up. They had come too far to give up. Chief Engineer Woojin began teaching council engineers how human fold drives worked. He had spent his whole life stealing and copying their technology. Now he was sharing his improvements freely. "Why are you helping us?" a council engineer asked him. "We tried to kill your species." Woojin shrugged. "Because if we share knowledge, everyone grows stronger. And because my grandmother always said that the best revenge is living." Well, Captain Yuna recovered from her injuries in a hospital ship orbiting New. So, she had survived the crash by a miracle and escape pod launched seconds before impact. Her ship was gone, but she was alive. The admirals offered her command of a new ship. She accepted. "This time," she said, "I will command an embassy vessel instead of a warship. I think I have had enough of fighting." High Counselor Voss was transferred to a prison station to await his trial. He spent his days in a small cell, staring at the wall and trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. He never understood. Some people cannot. 6 months after the battle, humanity found their new homeworld. It was a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver oceans. Not Earth, never Earth, but somewhere new. Somewhere that could become home. The first colonists landed on a spring morning. They built houses and planted gardens and named their children after the family members who had stayed behind to die. Admiral Taiha visited the colony on its first anniversary. He walked through the streets and watched children playing in the sunlight. They laughed and shouted and ran without fear. They had never known the darkness of the void. They had never felt the weight of exile. For them, this purple sky was simply home. An old woman approached him. She carried a small child in her arms. "Admiral," she said, "my granddaughter was born here. She is the first human born on this world." Taiho looked at the baby. She had tiny hands and bright eyes, and no memory of anything but peace. "What is her name?" he asked. The old woman smiled. "Haro, it means spring. Because she is the beginning of something new." Taiho nodded. He reached out and gently touched the baby's hand. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his. "Welcome home, Haru," he said. That night, alone in his quarters, Admiral Taiho finally allowed himself to rest. He sat by his window and looked at the purple sky. 2 moons hung above the horizon, casting silver light across the land. He thought about his parents. He thought about the 8 billion who had died. He thought about the 40 years of hiding and building and waiting. And he thought about Haru, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, dreaming of a future without fear. "We made it," he whispered to the darkness. "We made it, Mom. We made it, Dad. We survived. And we stayed human." A tear ran down his cheek. Then another. He did not wipe them away. Somewhere outside, a child asked her mother why the sky was purple instead of blue. Her mother smiled and answered softly, "Because this sky is ours. And someday, you will show your children a sky they have made their own." The stars shone down on the new world. The first human world beyond Earth. The first of many. Humanity had come home, not to where they started, but to where they belonged, and the galaxy would never forget them again.